Hi, and welcome to Coffee Talk, the show that tackles messy life with simple truths. My name is Teresa McKelvey.
And my name is Andy Kinman, and we've got a great show for you today. So sit back, relax, get something to drink, and join us as we talk to Ashley and Drake Bradford.
Drake, Ashley, and Grant, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
So it's thanks to Andy that we have you guys. So how do you know Andy?
Andy married my brother and sister-in-law.
Oh, that's neat. That's great. So tell me a little bit about your family, Drake.
We have 6 members of our family, including our dog. It's me, Drake, my wife Ashley, Grant here, and then he's got a twin brother named Garrett, a brother named Eli, and another brother named Mason, and then Tilly is our dog.
All boys. Now, is your
All
dog
boys.
a boy or
No, she's a girl.
A girl. Aw.
Yeah. She's spoiled. She's
Oh,
more
I'm
spoiled than my
sure.
kids.
I'm sure. Now, what are the ages of your children?
So Mason is 8 years old. Eli is 6 and is about to turn, or no, he's about to turn 6. Sorry. Grant is 4. Garrett is 4. I'm 27. She's 26.
Awesome. Okay. So, tell me a little bit about Grant here.
So Grant is a twin, like I said. They were, we thought we were having one more kid, and turned out we were having 2. We found out our first ultrasound we were having twins.
Yeah.
And we were told right off the bat that they were monochorionic twins, which means that they share a placenta but are in separate sacs. And I, just being the person that I am, started Googling everything, and I found all these things about twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome and how it was a really big problem with these kinds of twins, and it affected about 30% of all monochorionic twins. So I start telling her about this, and it was weird how it all happened, because a girl that lives here in Ellick City was having the same kind of twins, and it turned out they had twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome, and then we were diagnosed with it. So it all happened at a strange time, but we knew about it beforehand because I'd done all this research. So we kind of expected it in a weird way. When they told us for the first time, we weren't totally surprised. We're like, okay, we know what this is. Well, at about 20 weeks, we went into UAB for just a routine checkup, and before we left, a nurse ran back out in the waiting room and got us. She was like, come back in here, come back in here. And we were like signing stuff, getting ready to leave and make our next appointment, and they were like, how fast can you get to Cincinnati Children's Hospital? And we're like, oh my gosh, why? And anyways, that's when they told us that we had progressed to stage 4 twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome, which is like right before the kid's decease. So yeah, it was kind of crazy. So anyways, the very next morning, we spent the night in Birmingham that night at a family member's house, and the very next morning we drove straight to Cincinnati.
Through snow apocalypse.
Yeah, there was snow everywhere. It was crazy.
Yeah.
So much snow on the ground up there. In some places it was like knee deep, and we still had to manage to get to the hospital and everything. And then a day or 2 later, she was having surgery, and they had like a laparoscopic surgery, and they went in, and what had happened, just to explain twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome, or TTTS as they call it, is where twins, they're not Siamese, they're not connected by body parts, but a web of blood vessels form between one baby and the other, and they share blood flow. So essentially, food and blood and everything was coming down his umbilical cord into him, flowing through him, and then out of him into his brother, and then out of his brother. It was weird how it all worked out, but they had to go in and burn all the blood vessels that were connecting the 2 of them, because he wasn't producing any fluid. So if you can imagine like having a placenta and then 2 sacs inside that placenta, they're supposed to equally fill up with fluid and share the space. Because he wasn't producing any fluid, his brother was producing all the fluid and kind of like saran wrapped him to the wall of the placenta. So it stunted his growth and a lot of other things. But when they went in and burned all those blood vessels, it caused a chain reaction of like blood pressure problems and stuff, which caused them to have strokes. And they don't know how many or what happened. They do know that he had a brain bleed at some point when he was in the womb. We think it probably happened because of the surgery, but without the surgery, we would have lost both kids. And we were told that after the surgery, the chances of his survival went from none to 30%, and his brother went from like 30% to 70%. So it still wasn't 100% that they were going to make it. Really unsure, and we prayed a lot about it and just asked for. We just wanted our babies, no matter what came along with them, you know, and we were blessed with them. Yeah. And so Garrett bounces off the walls and makes up for everything that Grant can't do.
And then some.
And then some. And, you know, and that's kind of what all happened with Grant. I know that was a really scattered explanation of it all.
No, that was very informative.
Yeah, but that's essentially what happened and where we are today. And, you know, ever since then, she's been a stay-at-home mom, raising Grant and the other boys, and they're all growing up and going to school and stuff now. It's got us sad. But
well, so can we? I would like to ask a little bit about Grant. What is? Can he hear? Can he? You know, just give us a little status on him.
He's never passed a hearing or vision test, so clinically he's deaf and blind, but we know he can see and hear, right? Like making no noise at all, you know, standing over him, he'll turn he can look at you if he wants to, you know what I mean? Or like if you slam a drawer in the kitchen, it'll startle him in the living room. You know, like we know he can hear and see. He just can't, whatever the test that they do. I know one test that they test the ear, and they listen for like a bounce back off the eardrum or something like that. I don't know what any of that means, but you know, so I guess technically he's deaf and blind, but we know he can see and hear.
Does he have seizures or anything like that?
Yeah. So he used to have a lot of seizures, and he has something called West syndrome, which is just infantile spasms, and it's where how it normally looks in little babies is they have you know, the Moro reflex, the startle, where they throw all their arms out like a starfish and then they come in and they cry. He used to do that rhythmically. So he would throw his arms out and he'd kind of spasm for a second, then he'd pull all of his limbs in and he'd cry and cry and cry. Well, eventually his neurologist was able to figure out what medicines helped, which ones didn't, and now he's on a really good regimen. He doesn't have any kind of seizures like that. Most of the time they're not visible. The most we see is like his eyes will flutter, you know, really fast, or he'll kind of throw his arms out and look around and be out of it, and then he'll come back. It's almost instant. It happens so fast. But yeah, that's about as far as seizures go now. They used to be a lot worse, but they're under control. So
now, Ashley, I'm hearing a lot of these boys of this house full, and you're a stay-at-home mom. Do you have a lot of family support?
We have a pretty good bit of family support from my grandmother and Drake's grandmother as well, and then my brother and sister-in-law help us out a lot too.
Can you talk about a little bit, you mentioned, Drake, about praying to God during the pregnancy. Can you talk a little bit about how your faith has carried you through this time?
Yeah, so, you know, not knowing if you're going to, when you're pregnant, you're expecting kids, right? You've been expecting this whole time, and then to hear, like, we're not sure, you know, you're going to get them, you kind of bank on it, because you just don't think these kind of things can happen to you. You know, I think prayer had a lot to do with us getting through those times. You know, hearing that our kids aren't going to make it, and like here in Alex City, the doctors in Alex City didn't want anything to do with them. We were told that if she went into labor in Alex City, that they definitely wouldn't make it. She had to be at UAB. So at 24 weeks, just a couple weeks after her surgery, because I think we spent 2 weeks in Cincinnati, we got snowed in. She was admitted to UAB and stayed there for the rest of her pregnancy till 31 weeks and 5 days. So, you know, of course, we were terrified through all of that, and doctors, not only with the risk of him, but because the blood was flowing out of him through that web of blood vessels into his brother. His brother, they were saying at the time, had heart problems. So that was another big scary thing, you know, and it's amazing. They have cardiologists for babies that are in utero. They have heart doctors for babies that are in the womb. It's insane what they can see. Yes. And so they put her on a medication that fixed his heart problem before
Yeah.
he was born.
Oh my goodness.
So,
Really well.
you know, if it wasn't for God though, and the amazing doctors and knowledge and technology and all these things, you know, our kids wouldn't be here.
Right.
But I think prayer got us through a lot of those times. Because what do? You know, you kind of, you don't know who to look to. I think.
And do you find yourself now daily looking to God for daily strength?
100%, yeah.
I would think so.
Every single day.
Yeah.
Because it's always a new challenge.
When he was really young, they put him on a reduced calorie formula because they were afraid of him gaining too much weight and it working his lungs harder. Because the more you weigh, the harder your lungs have to work. And turns out he was like starving to death, and nobody knew that. So we were in the hospital, and he had pretty much stopped bladder. His bladder quit working pretty much. He quit peeing. He quit using the bathroom. He was lethargic. So he would, at random, he would go to sleep and you couldn't shake him awake. He wouldn't wake up. And we didn't know to ask all the questions at the time. We've learned a lot since. But it turned out a nutritionist came in the room and they had already turned off his food and his IV. Sorry.
No.
And they asked us to call our family. Oh, God. Sorry. That asked us to call our family in, and we didn't. We said we were going to take him home, and that she made the decision to take him home so he could be around his brothers. And a nutritionist came in the room, and we had already been grieving. And we told the nutritionist that we were going to take him home. And that if we were going to take him home, we wanted him to have a full belly. We wanted him to be comfortable. And she put him on a new food. And it was like the next day, he became a different kid.
Oh my goodness.
He was starving.
Oh.
And we didn't know that. We were prescribed this formula, right? We were told is what he needed. And he was getting as much of it as we were told to give him, and it was a lot. It just wasn't enough calories. And at that point, and it was, now looking back, it was so obvious, but we didn't know. Right. You could see his vertebrae. He was so skinny. And anyways, we told the doctors we were taking him home. We checked him out of the hospital. She drove him home as fast as she can get him home. I was already there with the boys. And we just held him and loved him and kept feeding him and everything like normal. And he didn't die.
Wow.
Yeah, he actually...
he started singing to Carrie Underwood a week later.
No joke.
No joke.
No joke. He became a different kid overnight, which that nutritionist, we're convinced that nutritionist saved his life.
Yeah.
And that I remember, he'd been lethargic. He quit doing that. He started moving his toes, which he hadn't done in a long time. Started moving his legs. And ever since then, we trust doctors, but at the same time, we
have to trust God a lot more.
Yeah.
and ourselves.
Yeah.
And if we don't think something's right, we question it. It's something you don't know to do.
Yeah.
Grant is just his own person. There's not another person like him, and
But don't you think that that is kind of how doctors, and I don't want to bash doctors because
No.
the medical field is amazing.
Yes.
But don't you think that that they maybe shouldn't be projecting something into families?
Yeah,
You know, with
I
this,
could see that.
with this whole life expectancy, you know, it just, you don't know. It's not in our hands really, and I think maybe they shouldn't have even put that on. You know,
Maybe not, but now it's more of like a
It was our wake up call.
well,
Was
it was kind of a wake up call. But now that we're beating all of these odds, it kind of makes you feel good in a way,
but
right?
as
It's
you
like you're
approach one though, does it?
right. It gets
does
kind of scary,
yeah.
right? So he's 4.
Right.
They gave him a life expectancy of 5. We think he has a lot more
Right.
than 5 left in him, and we feel like we're almost like sticking it to the man, you know,
Right.
like,
So
you said
y'all
he,
are all superheroes in
Right.
this family.
You
I
know,
can
like,
see how this is.
yeah, you say he's going to live to be 2. Well,
Right.
hey, he just had his 2nd birthday, you know.
Right.
So it's kind of empowering in a way, in a weird way.
Yeah, I
It's
see
not
what
at
you're
first.
saying.
It's very,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
nobody wants to hear that, but
Right.
I think it gives you somewhat of a motivation, you know, because nobody gives up on their kid.
Right.
And nobody wants to. I wouldn't, and haven't.
Yeah.
So
I was terrified when we got the first life expectancy because my granddad died the year before I had the twins, and he was the one who announced it to our family. I gave him, jokingly, I gave him a Christmas card, and I put the ultrasound in there, and he was like, "What are these, cats?" And then my grandmother grabbed it up because, you know, she's seen the sonogram paper. She was like, "No, you're not. No, you're not." And she was like, "No, this, how many's in there?" And I was like, 2. And she was like, "Are you serious?" And I said, "Yes, you know, serious as I can be." And she was like, "Oh my goodness." Well, from that moment, my granddad was in the hospital at that time, but from that moment, he was like, "Get off your feet. You got kids to take care of." And he kept telling me the whole time, right before, like leading up to his death, he was like, "Make sure you take care of them babies. Make sure you take care of them babies." And me, like, I realized that I had 2 other kids, but I knew specifically he was speaking about these 2. To me, that was God through my granddad.
Right.
And I mean, those were his last words to me was, "Make sure you take care of those babies. I love you."
cancer is a terrible thing.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Well, you guys are such an inspiration to me. I'm sure Andy feels the same. And I
We're
cannot
glad
tell
we
you
could be
how
here.
many people, though, I feel that you're going to touch with your story. And people that are struggling or going or just have gotten a diagnosis, that this is going to help. You know, I'm sure that if you guys wish, you know, when you first went through this, you'd have had someone to go, "Hey, tell us, you know, how to be or what to draw on our faith." And so you are being the voice for someone else. So,
And there were other parents too
Yeah.
at Children's that we met,
oh, I'm sure, yeah.
you know, over time that gave us some advice. You know, I think that's really big too, is having kind of like a community you can go back to and bounce things off of.
That's what I was thinking. That could almost be as valuable as networking with other people who live this every day.
Right.
That information could be just as valuable almost as what the doctor says,
Right.
because it's like you said, you know Grant,
Mm-hmm.
right? You know what he can take, and you're with him every day. And so I would think that information from other people would be almost priceless.
And she's met a lot of people we've never met before in our lives just through Facebook, that they see our kid or we see their kid, one or the other, and like, hey, that, you know, we can relate in some way, right? And then before you know it, you know, she's got a friendship with somebody in Australia,
Yeah,
you know, like,
I know.
yeah, just, that's, it's amazing how it happens. But yeah, it's really nice. And like you said, almost more valuable than having a team of doctors to have a bunch of people to look to and ask questions.
Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Holy, holy is He.
So thank you for humoring us and singing a song for us. I know it was hard and probably uncomfortable, but thank you so much.
Well, thank you for playing for me.
Absolutely. It's fun. I haven't played in forever, so that was fun. But I've been looking forward to being able to play for you to sing. So thank you for letting me do that. Let's go back, all right?
All right.
When did you start singing?
Ever since I can remember.
Ever since.
Yeah.
Is it a musical family?
My mom plays piano. She used to play piano growing up, and my aunt plays piano, and they used to do it for my granddad in church. So I tried to get in on that, but it didn't come to me.
Right. So you've been singing your whole life. Family's musical. You play anything?
I play guitar a little bit,
Okay. How many chords you know?
about 3.
About 3. That's good. That's all you need.
I'm joking.
That's all you need. 3
I totally
chords.
know more than
Right.
that. But
right.
every country song is written on 3, right?
Sure. Yeah. You're good. So tell me, who are some of your influences?
Stevie Nicks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love her voice. It's just captivating, you know? And then Miranda Lambert. And I love Lauren Daigle.
Yeah.
Right now, she's popping,
Yep.
you know? So a lot of music.
Stevie Nicks is one of my all-time favorites. So you lost me there. So after Stevie Nicks, I was
Maybe we
good.
should have a jam session doing just
I know.
Fleetwood Mac stuff.
Yeah. We can do Dreams right now, right?
I know all the words to that. I won't mess that one up.
Yeah. So I do know that you sing with the praise band, the worship band at First Methodist. So how did that come about?
Actually, I'm always put in situations that I don't want to be in. And my husband's boss, Grant Bradford, he's the one that got me into that. He was like, Drake, your wife sings, right? And Drake says, yeah. He's like, well, we're short a member, so it'd be great if she could come. And then we all went up there, like the whole family, and they were like, come on, sing with us. And for like the first 2 weeks, I was like, no, I'm very shy, like in a small setting. But then getting on the praise band, and that was one of the biggest, I will say that's one of the greatest moments of my life, is actually learning how to worship, because I had to do that outside of the church to be more comfortable. And I had to really like scream and kick. And, you know, I told you about my 4-year-old Grant's twin. Me and him get in the kitchen sometimes, and we'll just kick the devil out, and we make a huge fuss. So
Right.
praise is one of those things where you can't just do it on Sunday morning. It has to be every day.
Right. So you feel maybe you've been called into that area. You feel a calling there.
Oh, yeah. I feel like mothering and praise, you know, I joked last week, I said, I want to get a minister of music, and I realized that the abbreviation for that was mom. So I was always meant to be a mom, you know?
There you go. There you go. Well, thank you again for coming and singing for us, and also for bringing some of your family. And
Yeah.
we've had a good time.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank y'all for inviting
Yep.
us.
Thank you for being here.
Well, thanks a lot for joining us today.
Yeah, if you like what we're doing, make sure that you give us a thumbs up, comment below, subscribe to the channel, go check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of that stuff.
Until next week, bye.